What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So I decided that after seeing all the enthusiasm that I got from my first video, which was titled The Top 10 Films That Demand Criterion Releases, I decided, why not? I think it's about time to come out with the sequel. And I'm probably going to be doing this at least once a year because there's truly just an endless amount of films that deserve the Criterion treatment. And if by chance you haven't seen my first video to this, I highly recommend you check it out. I'll leave the link in the description box below. But also just a fair warning, if you don't see certain films on this list, it's highly possible that I've either just not seen it yet, or it already has a pretty decent release from some other distribution company, whether it be through Arrow or through Arbalos or through Shout Factory. I just feel like if the film already has somewhat of a proper release, it's not gonna quite make it to my top 10 films that I feel like truly demand a Criterion release. And also, it's kind of crazy because I was really thinking about putting David Lynch's Lost Highway and Inland Empire on this list, but at this point, I mean, Lost Highway is rumored to have a Criterion release, but it's basically confirmed that Inland Empire has one. And by the way, I have reviews on both of them. I just reviewed Lost Highway no more than a month ago. And also in my last video, I put The Celebration or Festin, that's written and directed by Thomas Vinterberg, at the #1 spot. And literally like 4 or 5 months later, it was confirmed that they were going to release it on Criterion. So fingers crossed, maybe some of that magic can work this time too. And also one final thing, and I promise I'll shut up and get to the list. I'm ranking these movies based on which film I feel like is more demanding of a release. I'm not ranking them in terms of which film that I like more. So if you see a film above another film, it's not because I like that film more. It's more than likely because of the fact that it just has a worse release. But anyway, I've kept y'all waiting for too long, if y'all even stuck around to hear anything I said. But either way, without further ado, let's get onto this list at number 10, which is Post Tenebras Lux, which is a film that's written and directed by Carlos Regadas. So Post Tenebras Lux is a film that I actually saw before Hapon. I pretty much blind bought Hapon in one of the Criterion sales based on the fact that I really enjoyed Post Tenebras Lux. And my judgment served me right because I really dug Hapon quite a bit, and obviously Post Tenebras Lux, which is why it's on the list. I just feel like it would fit really nicely in the Criterion collection, mostly because Hapon's already in the collection, and I just feel like it would be quite fitting to add another Regadas film into the collection. But obviously I have it on here as well because there's not really a good release for this. There is a Blu-ray release for it, but you know, it's really nothing special. I feel like it deserves more than that. This is a film that, a lot like Hapon, Regadas is able to capture this surreal and dreamlike atmosphere and approach to his film. It's a film that, a lot like Hapon, is incredibly unafraid to take its time, but I feel like my experience watching this film was incredibly rewarding because this film offers a nice handful of imagery that will stick with you. You know, some of it even gave me a Lynch vibe, especially with what happens in the ending of this film. And even though this film does have this trippy aesthetic and surreal approach to its presentation, it still is able to explore grounded aspects of humanity. It tackles the class divide in Mexico. It tackles the breakdown of the nuclear family. It tackles a lot of different things about society and humanity, while at the same time being able to have this kind of unconventional experimental aspect to it that does feel dreamlike. And Regadas is a pretty divisive filmmaker, so go into this film knowing that he is definitely not making a film for everybody. There's a handful of scenes that are either shocking or graphic, so just kind of prepare yourself for that. But either way, I think this is a film that any art film lover should really check out, and it really does deserve to be in the Criterion collection, so that's why it's number 10 on my list. So at number 9, we have A Separation, which is written and directed by Asghar Farhadi. So A Separation is a film that I haven't talked about at all on this channel, and I've been truly dying to, because this was one of the very early blind recommendations that we've ever had in the Discord chat, in the very early stages of the Discord chat, and it was still, to this day, even though we have seen over 30 or 40 films in the Discord, this is still my #1 favorite. I think this film is a masterpiece. It's an Iranian film, and it's a film that I just think is written, directed, and acted to perfection. This is the film that's quite intense from start to finish. Again, beautifully written, beautifully acted. and everything just feels so authentic and feels so real. And I also love it so much because it just feels like such a complex film. Pretty much every character in this film, you truly feel their struggle and understand where they're coming from, even though some of their actions you don't really fully agree with. You can understand why they're acting the way they are and why they're choosing to do certain things. So yeah, I just feel like this film is nuanced as hell, and it handles its subjects with such maturity, whether it's about class, whether it's about marriage and divorce, whether or not it's about what makes a good parent, just all around spectacular filmmaking. I don't think Farhadi has a single film in the Criterion collection, but it really should. I mean, I've only seen A Separation, but I've also heard nothing but great things about the other films that he's made, like About Ellie and The Salesman. So, and this doesn't have that good of a release. I mean, I think there's a standard Blu-ray release for this in America, so that's about it. I think it deserves a lot more than that, so that's why it's number 9 on my list. So number 8, we have The Master, which is written and directed by the one and only Paul Thomas Anderson. I'm going to be honest, The Master is a film that I haven't seen in a few years, but I remember really digging it, obviously, because it's from my favorite contemporary filmmaker, Paul Thomas Anderson. And I just feel like there needs to be more Paul Thomas Anderson in the Criterion collection. I mean, you really only have Punch Drunk Love, and that makes no sense. I put There Will Be Blood in my last top 10 films that demand Criterion releases video, because that's not only my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film, but that's my favorite film of all time. But The Master is a film that, yes, I definitely need to rewatch, but I remember it having just so many great things about it. The obvious one, the performances. Philip Seymour Hoffman kills it in this film. Joaquin Phoenix, this is arguably Joaquin Phoenix's most impressive performance ever. And in Paul Thomas Anderson fashion, I remember it being beautifully shot, beautifully directed, wonderfully written, and I just loved also the way it explored the appeal to cults and how someone is prone to be brainwashed in certain ways. It's a film that I'm dying to rewatch, and I just really want Paul Thomas Anderson to have another addition to the Criterion collection. I mean, I'd be ecstatic if Phantom Thread made it or if Boogie Nights made it. Honestly, I think at this point they'd probably add Hard 8 to the collection because it's, the more obscure Paul Thomas Anderson film. And also it's the oldest, so it's probably in more need of a restoration. But either way, I just want a Paul Thomas Anderson film, and that's why it's number 8 on my list. So number 7, we have Mother, which is a film that's written and directed by Bong Joon-ho. So Mother, I have a review on this film. This is a masterpiece. This is a 10 out of 10. Everything about it, I think, is absolutely fantastic. The direction, the writing, the cinematography, the lead performance, all around just brilliant filmmaking. This is actually my favorite Bong Joon-ho film. I prefer this over Memories of Murder and Parasite. I'm not saying that it's necessarily objectively better than those films, but just like a personal preference, this is a film that moved me the most. It's a film that impressed me the most. And like The Master, there is a Blu-ray release for it, but it's incredibly standard. I actually own the Blu-ray for it right here. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of pathetic. And obviously, I think a masterpiece like that deserves a lot better of a treatment than that. So, it's Bong Joon-ho. They recently put Memories of Murder in the Criterion collection, so I think it'll fit right in with that. And that's why it's number 7 on my list. So number 6, we have Elephant, which is a film that's written and directed by Gus Van Sant. So Elephant's a film that I kind of slept on for quite some time, and this is a film that actually took quite some time to build its cult status, because even though it won the Palme d'Or, people were pretty mixed on this film. Especially a lot of people went into this film, just knowing that it was a mass shooting film. A lot of people also thinking that this was kind of like a recreation of the Columbine shooting, which is not true. I mean, it's truly inspired, and it's almost like the Columbine shooting, except an alternate reality in a way. But I think a lot of people went into this film not expecting it to take as much time as it did, because the first hour or so of this film really dedicates itself to give the audience a sense of perspective of not only what high school life is like, because a lot of people I feel like have forgotten, but just in terms of capturing the essence of what an average day in high school looks like. And in order to do that, this film was unafraid to have very long takes, where you see characters just walk down a hall for quite some time. And it's through the film's ability to capture this realistically that makes it to where the horrors that happen in the end are much more effective and a lot more anxiety inducing. And the mass shooting aspect, I mean, it does deliver and give people what they would want out of a mass shooting movie. I'm pretty sure a lot of people, when they seek out mass shooting movies, they want to see the actual mass shooting play out. And this film does that. You know, it doesn't pull any punches. It goes pretty much all the way with it, you know, if you are patient enough to wait for that build-up. But even though I feel like the mass shooting bit was done well, I actually prefer the build-up to that because I feel like that was more unique and was more expertly crafted in my opinion. But either way, this film only has a DVD release. There's not even a Blu-ray for it, which is kind of crazy considering that it's a Palme d'Or winner and it's such a cult classic now. I feel like this would fit right in with the Criterion collection, and that's why it's number 6 on my list. So number 5, we have Pink Floyd's The Wall. So I gotta say, when I was crafting this list, I asked a lot of my patrons in Discord what they think should be on this list, and I believe it was Cynic who brought this to my attention. And if I'm wrong, oh my god, I'm so sorry, but I do believe it was Cynic that said, hey, Pink Floyd's The Wall would be a great pick, and he's absolutely right, because not only do I just love Pink Floyd as musicians, and also not only is The Wall not only my favorite Pink Floyd album, but more than likely my favorite progressive rock album. The film, I feel like, is such a great visual odyssey to that album. It's been a very long time since I've seen it, but a lot of the images and a lot of the transitions and just a lot of what it offers visually really stuck with me, and I felt like the images flowed with the album quite well. And this is, again, a film that does not have a Blu-ray release. This is a film that is only available on DVD. I think there's some like deluxe editions that are available on DVD, but that's about it. And that's quite a shame. You know, I haven't rewatched it in a very long time. I'm talking like perhaps 7 years, so I can't go that much into detail about how I feel about it. But I do remember it being quite great, and it definitely left an impression on me. And this is a film that, a lot like The Master, I am dying to rewatch. And yeah, I also think this would be kind of a different and interesting addition to the Criterion collection. And for that reason, it's number 5 on my list. So number 4, we have Gummo, which is written and directed by Harmony Korine. So this one's kind of a long shot. I don't really see Criterion adding Harmony Korine to their collection, but I mean, it's not impossible. And Gummo is the only Harmony Korine film that I've seen that I think is actually great. I don't like Spring Breakers. The Beach Bum is decent, like 6 out of 10 decent. But Gummo is like 9 out of 10. Like I have a review on it. It's kind of an old video, but if you want to check out Cringe, go check it out. But I remember really liking this film. Just in terms of its aesthetic presentation, it feels incredibly raw. It feels very on location, which it was. There's just a really particular VHS aesthetic to this film, which is why the VHS copy of this film seems to be like one of the more popularly owned copies of the film, because it just really fits the aesthetic incredibly well. And again, this doesn't have a proper release besides VHS and DVD, so I would be ecstatic if Criterion stepped up to the plate and actually put this on Criterion. I could see them honestly putting a film like Julian Donkey Boy on Criterion Collection first before Gummo, just because they just put out The Celebration, which is part of the Dogma 95 movement, along with Julian Donkey Boy. But a guy can dream, and it would be awesome to see this on the Criterion Collection. I truly feel like it deserves it, and that's why it's number 4 on my list. So number 3, we have The Wolf House. So The Wolf House is more of a recent film. It's an incredible nightmare stop motion animation. Also have a review for this film if you want to check that out. But this is a film that I just feel like has been unfairly treated. Pretty much everybody that I know who has seen this film loves it to death and appreciates its craft, but yet only has a DVD release. Is still pretty damn obscure for a film like this, and I just feel like it deserves a hell of a lot more attention than it currently has been getting, because it's an incredibly meticulous and legitimately frightening film. This film establishes this lingering sense of dread and anxiety throughout the entire film, where you feel like you're constantly on edge. If you haven't seen or heard of The Wolf House before, I highly recommend checking out whenever you have the chance, and that's why it's number 3 on my list. So number 2, we have Lars von Trier's Dancer in the Dark. So Dancer in the Dark is a film that when I first watched it, I liked it. I thought it was quite good. But I haven't given it a fair rewatch because even though I liked it quite a bit, I didn't like it nearly as much as some people I know, like Eric and Perry. They are in love with this film. But I still feel like this is such a perfect film to add to the Criterion collection. They already have a nice amount of Lars von Trier films, and I feel like Dancer in the Dark would be the next appropriate one to add to the collection. Perry likes to call this the anti-musical, so it's a musical for people who don't like musicals. And in a way, I agree with that, and maybe in some ways I don't, but either way, I do feel like if you don't like musicals, you won't hate this one. This would be the one that you would at least give a pass and enjoy to some degree, because I'm somebody who doesn't like musicals very much, and I still enjoyed this film quite a bit. It's incredibly unforgiving with its morbid elements to the narrative and the characters. But, you know, that's classic Von Trier. Anybody watching a Von Trier film, you already know what to expect at this point. But this is a film I actually have a whole review for. I made a video some years ago where I tackled 3 different Von Trier films in one video. So if you want to check that out, please do. But either way, I think that a lot of people would be really excited to see this film in the Criterion collection. I think it does have some Blu-ray releases, but one of them's a Japanese release. But overall, it hasn't gotten the proper treatment that it deserves. And I feel like that's a damn shame. So that's why it's number 2 on my list. Alright guys, it's time. It's time to reveal the number 1 film on this list. The number 1 film that I feel like demands a Criterion release. And that film is... Once Upon a Time in America, which is written and directed by Sergio Leone. So, I should have mentioned this like way earlier, like in the precursor to this video, but I only included 1 film per filmmaker. Because I really, really wanted to put Once Upon a Time in the West in the number 1 spot, but I feel like Once Upon a Time in America is dying for a better release. Because there are so many different extended cuts to this film, but most people agree that the definitive best version of this film is the 4-hour and 11-minute cut, which is the version that I saw before I reviewed it. Yes, I have a review, shocker on Shock Street. But this is a film that is in desperate need of a proper Blu-ray release, but also of restoration. Because even though there is a Blu-ray release of this film that does contain the 4-hour cut, it's incredibly expensive because of how rare it is. It's going to cost you over $100 just to get. And even then, the restoration qualities to the extra scenes that were added into the 4-hour cut are pretty awful to look at. I mean, clearly I understand that there's only so much you can do, but I feel like within the hands of the Criterion collection, they would be able to do some of their magic and make it look the best possible way that it could. I mean, it's such a fantastic film, and it really deserves it. The score from Ennio Morricone is off the charts fantastic. Just really moving stuff. And the acting in this film was fantastic. Standouts being Robert De Niro and James Woods. And also, obviously, the thing that I just love the most about Leone's films is his style. This film has his fingerprints all over it. There are so many memorable scenes. It gets to the point where you're watching the film and it's like, okay, that was a memorable scene. Okay, that was also a memorable scene. It's just like back-to-back memorable scenes, and it's just like every scene that you watch is somehow better than the other one. And that's kind of the same effect that I have with Once Upon a Time in the West, which for the record, I do love Once Upon a Time in the West more than Once Upon a Time in America, but again, Once Upon a Time in America, I feel like deserves a proper release just a bit more. If Once Upon a Time in America is a film that you've been sleeping on, or if Leone is a filmmaker, somebody that you haven't really dived into yet, I implore you to please check his films out. I'd probably recommend Once Upon a Time in the West first, because that's my personal favorite of his. But just watch one of his films, because I think he's an incredible filmmaker. Very stylistic, incredibly influential. I feel like If we didn't have Sergio Leone, arguably we wouldn't have Quentin Tarantino. Either way, that's basically my list, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Obviously, I want to hear what everybody's lists are in the comment section. If you had the power to give Criterion 10 films of your choice to put in the Criterion collection, which ones would it be and why? I would love to hear it. But that's it for this video. If you really enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.